What is up, my beautiful people? It's Nicole. Hello, happy Friday. It's podcast day, and I am really super psyched to share today's interview. So, as some of you might know, I have a really lovely online community called JournalSpeak with Nicole Sachs, LCSW, on Facebook. And a lot of people there on that page I have never met. I'd say 99% of the people on that page I have never met. I've never worked with them personally, and they have simply come across my book or my course or my website or my YouTube channel or an interview I've done anywhere, all over the place. And they have become inspired and they've become curious. And so they request to join the page, and they just start talking to each other. They ask each other questions, and they help each other, and they start to heal. And sometimes people come back with their success stories. And even if their success stories are in progress, it's just these leaps of success with overcoming their pain, overcoming their fear, and being just much more at ease and at peace and successful in life. And so what I started to do is just kind of once in a while, when I saw one of those success story posts, I would put it out there and I'd say, hey, if anybody on this thread wants to be interviewed for the podcast, hit me up. And I've been getting a lot of messages, which is so exciting and fabulous. And so the first of those interviews is today. Today I'm welcoming Lee. He is a member of my Facebook group. I have never met him personally. I've never worked with him personally, but Lee is healing by leaps and bounds from his horrible symphony of pains and conditions and symptoms that have ricocheted around his system for over 15 years. And so Lee is here to share his experience, his hope, his journey with you guys, in hope of allowing you guys to take some of that inspiration and put it into your own healing. He has a profound thing he says at the end, and I'm just going to mention one phrase of it because I'm going to use it as the title for this episode. When I asked him at the end to summarize his advice for people who are sitting there, maybe a little skeptical, maybe a little hopeless, maybe a little unsure if this could possibly work for them, I said, Lee, what would you like to say to those people? And he took a pause and he took a breath and he said, this is truth. And wow, did that kind of hit me in the solar plexus, because this is truth, my friends. And you and I being able to sit here together and have this conversation and invite Lee into this conversation, a person who's just another person walking this earth, just like you, just like me. We all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different socioeconomic status and race and parental situation and any sort of, factor that went into our lives. And we can still come to this place of togetherness and understanding and learn to heal. So with that, I invite you to sit with Lee and I and have a conversation about the possibilities for you in your life. So with that, I give you Lee. So Lee, welcome.
Hi, good to be here.
So why don't you share with people a little bit what's going on with you and where you've been and some thoughts on the journey.
Okay. My actual Dr. Sarno journey started about 15 or so years ago. I don't remember the exact year. But up to that point that got me there, I had literally, probably for 15 years or more, I was addicted to the chiropractor because my back I was constantly in discomfort, not really pain, but I felt like I wasn't adjusted. And I literally have been adjusted all around the world. I would go to their house on Sundays and have them adjust me on the floor. It was crazy. I was so addicted to that, and it completely ended once I saw Dr. Sarno. But ultimately, what had happened was I had this severe pain from this is apparently the number 2 site. Number 1 is low back pain, the most people have, and then the next one is the neck shooting down to the shoulder. Okay, so that was a really painful, and I was going to a pain doctor, and I had already had 2 shots under X-ray, and we were talking about surgery. And my wife was watching Larry King one night late. I was already in bed, and she saw Dr. Sarno on with Howard Stern. And so the next day she was telling me about it. And so I ended up getting Dr. Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain, and read that, and it made sense to me. Um, but ultimately, it didn't seem like it was enough for me. So I was blessed to live a 2 hour drive from Dr. Sarno's office. So, people come to him from all over the world. I just had to drive a couple hours. So I made an appointment. I went to see him, and yeah, that was on a Monday, and his lectures happened to be that night. So I just stayed in New York, and he does like a double lecture after the visit. But he checked me out, said absolutely TMS. So I ended up kind of working, with his book and him. Once you see him, you had access to him all the time on the phone, which was good. I called him a couple times after that, but I ended up not. I was literally in pre-surgical testing when I went to see him, and I didn't get the
What
surgery.
surgery were you slated for, Lee?
Neck surgery. I had I had a herniated disc, spinal stenosis, and I don't know, the pinched nerve is seems to be the thing they talk about all the
Okay.
time.
Yeah,
Which
definitely.
I found out later is if your nerve was really pinched, it would die and you would feel nothing. So apparently, there is no such thing as a pinched nerve that's causing continual pain for weeks and months. But anyway, so I healed doing what Dr. Sarno says to do. Um, and it was pretty amazing because I was literally slated for surgery, um, but I didn't get it. So
And so let me ask you a question because I think it's really important for people to understand if they're struggling on this journey. When you say I healed because of what Dr. Sarno told me to do, and that was before you understood JournalSpeak and all the things that have led you to meeting me.
correct.
What did you do at the beginning? What did you do? Because I think it's all important
Well,
for
okay, and what I've done, in fact, over 15 years, my healing back pain book is the most ratted out looking book in my whole collection because I back to
Mhm.
that thing, highlighted it, wrote notes in it, and all that. So I continue to go through his book, and his lectures, and he has his 12. His 12 daily reminders, to remind you that the pain is psychologically induced. There's nothing physically wrong with you. There's no reason
Right.
for you to not exercise and do normal things. And so the pain, what I found for me, I mean, I guess it's different, but it slowly kind of dissipated over, I think, maybe 1 to 2 months, and then I was totally pain free. And it was awesome. But I basically, kept the reminders in front of me. I kept going through his book, reading the places that I highlighted, and that's pretty much what I did. There really wasn't all the tools and all the information out there that there is now, on YouTube and on the internet, and all
Right.
the different doctors that now have kind of followed his lead. So.
So let me reframe this for people who are listening because I know a lot of people come into this and don't really have a clue of what they're hearing, and they have some idea of maybe the work that I've brought out there. So when I talk about the three steps to healing, the three parts of healing, it's believe, do
Mhm.
the work, and patience and kindness for yourself. And so what Lee is explaining and what Dr. Sarno, obviously, I mean, this whole theory is Dr. Sarno's, but what he explained so perfectly is that you have to believe. And believe is what happens and what has happened, what happened to Lee when he was reading this book over and over, doing these 12 reminders. What he did is he calmed his nervous system into understanding that there was nothing actually wrong with him. There was nothing to be afraid of. This pain was actual pain. He felt it. It was as debilitating as if someone was stabbing him with a knife. However, it was emotionally and psychologically induced, as he mentioned. So I think that's something that people really need to understand, because when I talk about journal speak, that's really about doing the work, but the belief aspect is just as important and just as profound. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Yes, and like I say, belief comes by, continually hearing and reading and putting that stuff in front of you, because everything else you're going to hear in the world, an entire gigantic businesses and hospitals are built around back pain and stuff like that. So what you're hearing from everybody else is you got a physical problem, whatever. You have a herniated disc, you have a pinched nerve, your spinal cavities are thinning. I mean, it's all kind of stuff out there.
Right.
So you have like this little kind of narrow road to focus on, and you got to stay focused on it, because everything else you hear, like Dr. Sarno said, where are all the ulcers? I mean, I can remember my dad just having mail-ox everywhere in his car, at his office, and mail-ox all over the place.
The 80s was ulcer time.
Exactly. And now everybody's got back pain, and what they do is surgery all the time, And so part of that is, I guess, because they can see everything now with the MRIs and all that kind of stuff that they couldn't see 40 years ago as well. So, they've just decided that this is the cause of the pain, which it's not. I guess Dr. Sarno calls them normal abnormalities.
Normal
Right.
abnormalities, yes.
That by 20, everybody has their bottom herniated disc completely herniated anyway, their bottom disc. So it doesn't cause pain. So I guess maybe I had an easier time believing it because I have personally been through some serious emotional issues. I've been through several major depressions in my adult life too. So I knew that there was some emotional issues going on. So for me, I guess it wasn't that hard to believe it,
Right.
and it just made sense to me too, just in my mind, and then in my heart, that it kind of made sense there too, knowing what I had been through before. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to recognize that belief happens on two levels. Belief happens in terms of your logical mind, which is what you just talked about, but your daily reading and almost like meditating on this theory is what turned that belief from just in your logical mind. It took root in your heart and in your more emotional mind.
Exactly.
And that kind of belief is the belief that really turns the page for people in their healing journey.
Right. And so I had gotten better, and sometime later on, I got this severe pain in my left heel, and I couldn't stand on it and whatever. So that was the only time I actually called Dr. Sarno post seeing him in his office, and he said, absolutely, this is TMS. And we talked a bit, and I dealt with that, and that went away. And so now I had a template on how to
Right.
deal with stuff, because I didn't have any of these tools like JournalSpeak back then. I didn't do therapy. I didn't do anything other than kind of go through Dr. Sarno's book, and I got his subsequent books as they came out and read them, and as he learned more, I learned more. But I am the type T personality, like big time, perfection.
Explain that for people who have never heard of type T
Okay, type
personality.
T is TMS for TMS, and it's
Yeah.
like,
TMS.
perfectionistic. It just, it was so easy for me to put down, going forward to the JournalSpeak thing, putting down the personality issues of the three categories that we're supposed to
Yeah.
list for the JournalSpeak, and it's like I came up with this huge list of stuff about my personality, and indeed, perfectionism, intelligence
Are you
too.
a goodist? Are you a
Uh-oh.
goodist? Do you want everyone to think that you're a good guy and that approve of you
Well,
and think
well, absolutely, because the whole perfectionistic thing, and I know where that came from. It's like my parents. Okay. My mother told me this story that I don't remember, but she said when I was young, that she came up to me and just hugged me, just because she was my mom and came up to hug me. She said, you stood there stiff as a board, and you said, but Mom, I didn't even do anything. And so
Oh,
there's a
wow.
little boy who learned that you had to do something to be loved. Okay. So you got to be perfect or you don't get the love. And that's really all we're really looking for is the love. Right. And
Yes.
so, um, so you perfectionistic. I have what I you guess what you typically call the creative personality. I'm an artist, architect, musician. So they tend to be a little more melancholy, uh,
Right.
compulsive. I was compulsive, very organized, very very introverted, yet not like hiding, but just I had so much going on inside my head. I didn't need external. So, but I was also, judgmental and pride and all this kind of stuff is just to kind of build yourself up so you feel good enough about yourself that you are capable of being loved at that point instead of being loved for just that you're a human being on this planet, you know, created to be loved.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
yeah, so that's where I think the type T personality comes from. And a lot of that does come, I guess, from how your parents were treated. And as an adult, I learned terrible things about my parents' childhood, and I understood, but that didn't change the 3-year-old, the 2-year-old, the 5-year-old,
That's right.
that got all their stuff because they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and you know what I think people don't realize, and I think it's starting to become more in the common vernacular that we feel trauma in our bodies and that our bodies store trauma. But
Hmm.
that is something that's really important for TMS recovery is you have to understand, regardless of the compassion you may be able to find for your parents or for whomever hurt you when you were a child, when you're an adult, you can find compassion. And I think that's awesome and so important because forgiveness is first and foremost for yourself,
Absolutely.
but in the end, that that childhood experience, and that little kid still needs a voice, which is what I know we're going to get to the JournalSpeak stuff, but the child still needs a voice in order for you to stop holding that trauma that he or she experienced.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't yell at your parents when you're 4 years old. Well, I mean, some kids do, but I mean, you can't fight with what they're telling you. They are the ultimate authority. So what they say goes, and what they taught you, you get.
Right.
So, but yeah, I had to go through. It was quite a process of understanding, and it took more than just one time to sit down and forgive my dad and my mom for this and for that and whatever. But yes, absolutely had to work through the forgiveness, and there's a lot of emotional release when you can get to that. I found for me. And so yes, I think it's very important. And you're right, foremost for yourself, because you're just holding on to something that they don't even know about, and it's just messing you up.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a podcast. So the day that we're doing this interview is actually podcast day. That a podcast that I recorded previously, and one of the things I say is acid does more damage to the vessel in which it is stored than that on which it is
There
poured.
you go.
Right.
All right.
So we hold on to that acid; it burns through us. So, but I don't want to get us off track. So so continue on your story.
Okay.
You
So
healed. You healed through doing the Dr. Sarno work, but you didn't know what else
I
was
I,
coming
I
for.
did. I exactly. And I would have things, but I never went back to the chiropractor. Never felt like I needed to be adjusted again. And all that was just having me focus on my body so much. I mean, really, so much. My wife has been saying for we married 27 years. She's been saying it's always something, Lee. It's always something, and
Right.
Dr. Sarno has a term for that, symptom imperative. And it's like, yeah, it is always something because
Yes.
my body has to continue to make symptoms, so I can't feel what's going on inside of me emotionally.
That's right.
So I went through the years. I mean, I'd have ridiculous things. Like I'd bend over to pick up something off the ground, and I'd get up, and I would just have a severe pain in the lower back, and I would just like, really, really,
Right.
come on. I mean, let's get real. And it would be gone within 24 hours. But that happened a number of times. So your body's still, I mean, your mind's still trying to get you, you know. Um, and I had a couple different other manifestations with tendons and such, and the plantar fasciitis for a while. But I knew what this was, and I would deal with it as Dr. Sarno. I would go back into the book and do all that, but I didn't have any other tools other than pretty much Dr. Sarno's book and what he had told me and what I had learned at his lectures. Um, But over time, um, the next kind of significant thing that happened was about a year and a half ago. I was I ended up, well, about a couple years ago, I started to get carpal tunnel symptoms, and and they started to get worse. And I also had a trigger finger in that same hand, uh, and I went through Dr. Sarno's books because I had several of them at this time, and I'm looking, and at that point he had just in his books he was like carpal tunnel may, like he wasn't certain at the time, definitive. So I was really struggling, and I'm like, well, it's got to be TMS. So I'm doing push-ups, and it's like it's getting
Mhm.
worse, it's getting worse, it's getting
But
worse.
your fear is
My
building.
fear
That's
is
the
built.
problem.
You're right, and
Fear is
but
building.
my I was conflicted because I knew TMS, but I also knew this is insanely painful. It was keeping me from playing the guitar. It was keeping me from doing things. It's your hand, right? You do this stuff with your hand,
Yeah, of course.
right? So, um, ultimately, I think I went onto the TMS wiki site, and they have a whole list of doctors and therapists that are TMS savvy. And so I called up this this um uh
Osteopath?
no, I'm sorry, it's wrong. It's the orthopedic surgeon. He was an orthopedic surgeon,
Okay.
but he was listed as a TMS doctor. So apparently these guys will do both. If you don't buy the TMS, they'll give you surgery or whatever. That seems to be how it
Okay.
kind of works. But
I don't know how I feel about that,
I
but
know, but
okay.
I know. But he was very gracious. He spent like 10 minutes on the phone with me during office hours. Didn't know me from Adam, and asked me a bunch of questions, and I talked to him, and he was saying that there is both TMS carpal tunnel and real carpal tunnel. And I at this point I really didn't know, so I was using him as an authority. And after the 10 minutes, he told me that he felt I should get the surgery. Which now I look back and I see there is no carpal tunnel that's not TMS based on this whole nerve thing. If it died, right? So there is
Absolutely, by
no
the way. I
carpal
just want to
tunnel
throw it out there
that's
in
not
case someone just tuned in right now. There
TMS.
is no carpal tunnel that is not
That is not
TMS.
TMS.
Period.
But
The
I
end.
got the
Yes.
surgery, and I had the carpal and the trigger finger done at the same time. It was a year ago, end of June, and I never. It felt like I never healed right because the site of the carpal pain all the nerve pain went away, but there was still a lot of pain in like where my hand and wrist connected, and that didn't go away. I went through a couple tours of physical therapy, and believing that this was now a physical thing because that's what this TMS doctor told me. Um, and
And I want to say something about this because I want people to understand this is not to make people terrified, okay? It's not to make people terrified of doctors, and it's not to make people terrified of ever, not healing ever. I think it's just for people to understand, and I say this to people a lot. Everything we have been taught about the mind and the body being separate are wrong. And it is so important for people to understand that. So, what happened to Lee, I know this from experience because I've been doing this for 100 million years, is that he got the surgery. And because he had an expectation that the surgery was going to help his nerve pain, actually, the surgery did help his nerve pain a little bit. But that pain, which is what happens all the time in TMS, immediately transferred to the incision site, right, Lee?
yes, exactly.
Yes. And then the incision site in itself becomes the TMS. But the problem is that now that you have the shame and the fear and the guilt of having the surgery or whatever feelings are attached for whatever person, that becomes you give that a lot of meaning, and then it perpetuates the pain on the incision site. And I don't want to paint a grim picture because the truth of the matter is we're going to get to the solution, and when you get to the solution, no matter what the pain is, it can go away. And so, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there because what happened to you, Lee, is actually really normal.
Well, not only that, I think having gotten through and learned was really, and I'm still in the process because it's Steven Zanich's book. It's a huge book, but that's where I learned that absolutely nerve, if it's pinched off, it's going to die in a couple minutes, and then you're going to have no pain. And so I was like, whoa, okay, there is no such thing as a pinched nerve pain, and this whole carpal tunnel thing was obviously TMS always was, always will be. And so I learned a lot. I don't regret having the surgery because it kind of I guess I needed to do that and move on. And I learned a whole lot more after that. In fact, one of the things that happened with the current thing I'm dealing with as it started to get better, and the pain always tends to move around when you start getting better, is for about an hour. It was really strange. My other hand, I had the same middle finger was like was exhibiting trigger finger all of a sudden,
Isn't
and it
that
just lasted for
crazy?
about an hour, and then it went away. I mean, it was really strange.
But that's a gift. I know you know this, but I mean, just to like for anyone listening, that is a gift. If you are trying this work and if you start doing it, and all of a sudden, your left shoulder, which has been your problem for 5 years, starts to go away and your right shoulder hurts, that's called a gift from the TMS gods saying, you have TMS. Don't stop fearing that something is structurally wrong with you and just simply do the work and practice patience and kindness for yourself, and you will heal. So always have to throw that out there.
Exactly. So, but what had happened over time, even though I still, fast forward, 14 years, 13 years, whatever, I was developing this nerve issue, if you will, in my right thigh. And it was almost 4 years till it really got bad. I only kind of felt it was like a little numbness when I would stand up performing or something. And so I didn't really pay attention to it. But ultimately got to the point where I had numbness, horrible itching while it was numb, which is a really strange sensation, and this severe burning. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
severe burn. And literally, it would just shoot at me like somebody stabbed 50 burning hot ice picks into my thigh when I wasn't looking, and all of a sudden, bam! And I would literally jump and yelp with the
Yeah.
pain. But for some reason, I don't know why, I lost my way and I went to a pain doctor. Okay, I knew better, but I don't know why, but I went. And between the time I saw him initially and we had set up all these shots, because the diagnosis was I had bursitis in my hip and I had a neuralgia paresthetica, which is supposedly an entrapped nerve going into my thigh, which, again, it's the same thing as carpal tunnel, basically, but in your thigh, in my thigh. So um, I don't know what happened between the time I made that decision and a week or two later, but I ultimately called up. I canceled all of my shots. I realized this had to be TMS, and so I started searching again, on the internet and seeing what was out there in addition to the books that I had. And lo and behold, I'm searching Dr. Sarno, and Nicole shows up with this tips on JournalSpeak, and I'm like, what? I didn't even know what she was talking about. But so I clicked on it and I was listening to it, but it didn't make any sense to me because I hadn't. It was kind of a follow up to the initial explaining, understanding what JournalSpeak is in the first place. So I didn't really get it, but I thought, well, and I just kind of moved on. And a couple weeks later, I don't know, you showed up again or something, and this time I made a folder I made a folder and saved a whole
I got a
bunch of your
folder.
video. You have your own folder, yes, in my YouTube channel. So, and I started listening and about this journal speak process, and it's not anything that I had ever had. It's not a tool I ever had previously for the last 15 years. So I said, you know what? It's 20 minutes. I mean, 20 minutes to get rid of this severe pain. I mean, I was limping. I mean, it was horrible. It was like nonstop. It was really bad. Um, I couldn't exercise, etc. And just in a lot of, I mean, fiery burning nerve pain is really really not fun.
No, it's a
It's
bad
really
one.
not fun.
It's a bad one. On the list of ones, it's a bad
Yeah.
one.
So anyway, so I said, okay, I'll do this. So I made the list of uh, um, the three categories,
Categories.
right? And what I do is and I open it up and I kind of scan through and I'm like, okay, what do I need to write today? And something will just kind of like I'll end up focusing on one of the things, and so I'll cross it out and then I'll start writing about it. And I started on the 11th of November, and it was a
So just so people know, today is the 14th of December. So, I mean, podcasts live
in perpetuity.
forever. So it's been about 4.5
Yes,
weeks.
exactly. So so as I start this, I'm continuing to look at all of your videos and such, and I just have to thank you that that stuff is out there, and at no cost, and it's a tool like no other I've ever had in the whole time I've been doing this, and I've always been an emotional a person. I'm a songwriter. I'm just an emotional guy. And I cry at the drop of a hat. Little girls got nothing on me when it comes to that. So I started this process, and every time was like it was kind of intense. And I write so bad that I can't even read when I'm writing, trying to write good. I can't even read half of what I write when I go back. There's no way anybody could read it, even if I decided to leave it out and let people read it. They couldn't understand it, I'm sure.
Right.
So, but I would kind of write fast, as fast as I could think, and I would speak it. And as I was writing it, I would say it, and then there was a lot of weeping and a lot of stuff, and I started to notice the pain started waxing and waning. I had for a number of months I had issue where, and this is really stupid, because of the way I was sleeping, I guess my shoulders were in severe pain. But that sleeping is pretty, you know, a pretty mellow activity. You really can't cause pain.
Hey, Lee, it's not because of the way you were sleeping.
Oh, I know. What I was saying was that it was, I tried all this stuff because I have wide shoulders, so I thought, but so that actually went away. And for a while, and then that's the first thing that came back at me when I started doing the journal speak, and the thigh started, like I would have periods where it was like a less intense, and I could see that it was changing. So then this thing came back, and I'm like, okay, all right, we're winning. All right, starting to come back. A knee pain that I had that was told was arthritis, and that's really weird because I was looking at the X-ray and the doctor, and there's no narrowing, and he's like, "Oh, you can't see the narrowing, but there's narrowing there. It's arthritis," and I'm like, "I don't see it. Okay, I have good eyes. I don't see it." So, but that pain came back. That had gone too with dealing with it with TMS. So all these old pains are like moving around, coming back. That trigger finger thing for an hour. So all this stuff is happening. I know I'm winning. So there was one particular session, and I did post about it on your site, where I accessed something that apparently I was repressing. My mother had passed away in February, and in the time afterwards, I was kind of wondering. I said, "But this just didn't seem that hard of a thing," and I all of a sudden it just popped into my head. The whole grief just showed up all at once while I was doing the journal speak session, and I was wrecked like I've never felt before in my life, and so I grieved. For my mother, and then there was some issues with the hospital that they really screwed up and messed up her last few days. Nobody could even go visit her towards the end of her life, and I was furious at those guys. I knew I was, but I dealt with that too. That came out, and I was just raging and raging. And I will tell you that after that session, my thigh pain was about 80 to 90% lessened immediately. I never experienced anything like that. It was always kind of a lessening little by little. It literally.
And I want to say something about that because I think that is it's a profound thing when that happens. And it does not happen for everyone. So if you're out there and you're hearing, well, that didn't happen for me, the truth is never, ever, I do these interviews to inspire you because I know that there's a little bit of Lee and a little bit of me and a little bit of everyone that I talk to and hear from that is also a little bit of you. So I understand that that's something that happens to some people and not others. But I will say that Lee and I have the exact same experience in that way, where when I figured out my real, true, deep feelings about motherhood, which I write about in my book, my back pain was 80% gone the next morning. And I think that, and it still ebbs and flows after that, but I do want to bring to light that when you there, I guess I want to say this is a possibility for you. There are people that are sitting there listening to this in bed where they haven't even properly gotten out of bed for months. And there are people that their lives have been so completely cut short in half, in order to like just deal with their a massive amount of chronic pain symptoms. And so I do want to say, if you can bring yourself in alignment with this thought process, with what Dr. Sarno taught, what I have evolved into my JournalSpeak stuff, if you can bring yourself in alignment with it and do the work, experiences like this are possible for you. And I will say that I think Lee's experience was primed with how much he already had sort of like in the back bookshelves of his mind where he had learned about this. So that also, is a step in getting this kind of really profound experience. But I'm really so thrilled for you that you were able to get that kind of relief, Lee.
Yeah, and then like I said, I've been dealing with the TMS in various and sundry forms for over 15 years, and I never ever had an experience where pain left that quickly. It was always a slow kind of lessening, and like, or just like the other day, I'm driving, I'm like, wait a minute, it's afternoon. I don't think I had any pain in my thigh at all so far today, you know. So that's always the way it's been for me. So this was just like a one-time thing that happened.
Well,
Um,
that's the power of JournalSpeak. I will say that. And it is not just because I created it, it is the power of this because you are giving your nervous system a true dose of we're okay. I can feel this and I'm not going to die. And immediately it drops its guard. And that's what happened to you.
yeah, and so I'm finding that the Facebook page is very helpful. Um, so I mean, everybody's essentially going through the same thing. It's just maybe a
Yeah.
little different manifestation, but there's always some doubt and fear which comes at you. And I've always have typically been throughout my life kind of a fearful kind of person, and that's much better now. I mean, I've kind of worked on that over my adult life. Um, but the fear, you'll get fear, you'll get doubt, and is this really right? And oh, I feel it again. What's happening? And it's the nature of the beast. It's not a take these pills for 10 days and then you're better. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I posted on. I saw you had a thing about a 28-day challenge. I don't even know when that came out. But you kind of set it up so that it didn't matter when you started it.
Yeah. That's on the YouTube channel. There's a video called the 28-Day Challenge.
So I said, okay, when I get to 28 days, I'll see where I'm at and I'll post something. And so literally in 28 days, which 20, I did it. I did it a couple times a day in the beginning because I really wanted to get better. But it's been where I started and where I went in just 4 weeks time was amazing. And this is a tool that I'm sensing is ultimately going to get me to the point where I'm not never ever get a pain again, but where there's so many different manifestations that change and come back, and they keep coming back because the emotions are still there, and so
Because there's no cure for being human.
there you go. But in my heart, I'm sensing that if I kind of keep up with this journaling, um, that maybe I will get to the point where it's not, as my wife says, it's always something, And I have hope that this seems to be a tool. I know the other ones don't do that because I've been using them for 15 years and they work, but it never really got to the core and got the core cleansed out like the JournalSpeak is doing.
Yeah, and you're first of all, I'm gonna, you're saying I'm hopeful, or I'm thinking this might happen. I'm sitting here telling you absolutely, positively, Lee, you will never have chronic pain again if you stick with JournalSpeak, and it doesn't mean you need to do it every day of your life. Okay, so I'm like 20 years into this, and here's how I do it. I cannot journal speak on paper or on computer for weeks at a time. But then I'm going through a particularly stressful time. I know it's building up. I know there are like 3 or 4 things my kids have done in the past month that I haven't let go, or, a fight with my partner, or whatever, happens out in my world. I get a rejection from work. I'm desperate to share this message and somebody says, yeah, no, thank you. And I know I log that, right? I log that into my TMS reservoir, as Dr. Sarno called it, and I can feel it. I can feel it's getting a little high. I'm getting like, different symptoms. And when I say it's getting high, if you picture like a beaker inside of your chest and like it's getting to the top, right? I keep scooping into it, like a fight with someone or a rejection or somebody hurt my feelings or I said something was okay when it wasn't. And, so it's building up and it's building up. And I get a sense, because you start to learn your body. I know it's getting up there. And so I maybe wake up in the morning and my back is stiff, or I maybe feel this like low grade headache all day. So, this is the thing about this tool. The reason it never fails you is because you have the power to pick it up. If I don't pick it up, I would be in chronic pain because anybody would, because chronic pain is a manifestation of fear and of not caring for yourself. But if I pick up the tool and I say, nope, I'm giving myself an hour today. I'm going to do my journal speak. I'm going to meditate and I'm going to, get my nails done or whatever it is that makes me feel like I'm taking care of myself. And then the pain is gone. It staves it off because all the pain is a fight or flight reaction from your nervous system and your brain protecting you from the feelings. So as soon as you feel the feelings properly, there is no necessity for the pain. The pain literally just doesn't fire. What might have happened to you doesn't happen because the pain is simply a protective response. So that's the best way I can explain that. So Lee, you're right. You're right. You're protected now.
Well, it's good because that was just my sense, but now you've just you've confirmed that. So I'm I'm a little emotional right now, but I'm really glad to hear that because it was like a fight every so often. It would come back, and I'd have to deal with something else, something different. It was always something different, and so that's really I'm excited now, that I
And
can do that.
so Lee, is there any other piece of advice or is there any kind of like last message you'd want to give people who are sitting there who aren't where you are yet and who are just terrified and in pain and confused and maybe a little skeptical? Is there anything kind of closing words you want to say to them?
Well, this is truth. Okay, this is truth. All the stuff you're hearing out there from the doctors and the back pain giant businesses and all that, it's not true. It's not true. I know people have gotten surgeries, they don't work. A guy I got even to read the book, and he was talking. He went and got surgery. It didn't help. It's just not the way to go. This is the truth. Dr. Sarno found a significant truth that people have run with, like Nicole and the various other doctors. Um, you got to believe that it's true because it is. Okay, and I know it doesn't make sense to your logical mind, but we are not separate. You're right. We are not separate, mind and body. We are together. Mind, body, and me. I believe spirit too. So we're
Yes.
all. It's like we're all. One affects the other. It's just the way it is. And I would say, don't like say, well, it's been X days. And nothing's happened yet. Well, it's not a drug. We've been learned that you take a drug and in an hour you're better. And so
Yes.
that's not the way this works. And I see a lot of people on your site that say on the Facebook page that, well, I have pain here now, and then I'm free, and that like, whoa, that's perfect. That's exactly what happens when you're getting
Great
better.
news when it moves around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not like something to be afraid of. It's something to go, all right, I'm getting this thing on the run. And so, if the pain moves around, rejoice. Don't be afraid. If it takes time, it takes time. I mean, that's all I can tell you. You got to just be diligent. I think it took probably 6 to 8 weeks or maybe more. I don't really remember. It was 15 years for the initial thing that I went to see Dr. Sarno for to go away. And so this thing with my thigh, it's been a month and a half maybe since I've been starting to deal with it. A month, a little more than a month in with the JournalSpeak, and it still flares up. So it's not 100% gone yet, but it's better, and it keeps getting better. And so that's kind of the way you have to expect things to heal. It takes time. You got to do the work. You got to do the reminders. You got to just keep your mind focused, because whatever you're focusing on, that's what you're going to believe. You focus on something enough, you're going to believe it. So focus on this. Focus on the
That's right.
TMS, and know that this is truth. Read testimonies. I mean, there's testimony. Nicole has testimony videos out there from people. I know Steve Ozanich has testimonies, and these podcasts are testimonies, and so you can see that, hey, you're not any different,
That's
and it'll
right.
work for you if you give it a chance and do the work.
That's right. And I want to just point out in closing that when Lee says, well, it's been 4 weeks, but I still feel it flare up, but it's, it's a lot better. And because I read everyone's mind out there, and I know what people are saying, which is, I've been doing this for longer than 4 weeks. What about me? Listen to me. He is doing it with full belief, and he's doing the work like a warrior, and he's practicing patience and kindness for himself. So you guys need to know that it takes all three. If you are doing the work, but then spending a couple hours a day questioning this, so there's the belief part, or if you're not questioning it and you're like, I know this is TMS, but every time you sit down to journal, you're like, nah, I don't know, maybe later. Or if you believe it and you journal, but then you're like, you're a terrible person, you're not doing this well enough. Any of the pieces of those 3 pieces of healing will slow down your process. So if you really want this to work for you like a badass, which Lee is, then you need to lay down your weapon and just, I always say, raise your hands to the sky, put your face to the wind, and say, I surrender, I'll do it. I'll believe and I'll do it, because I'm going to tell you something, you can be well. So
Yes, and I say, I spent a couple. My business is super slow at this time of year, so when I got started, I was listening to the videos for like an hour a day. I was doing the JournalSpeak twice a day in the beginning. I was on that Facebook page posting and reading, and I was listening to testimonies and going back and listening to Dr. Sarno. There's a YouTube video out there, I think, where he reads this whole book. It's about 3.5 hours. Um, and so I just inundated myself with this, and I already had the belief, and
that's
I
right.
think it wouldn't be this far along if I didn't have that one crazy thing about my mom that came out, which has never happened to me before. So I think that I would still be, struggling a lot more, but it's not 100% better, but I'm exercising. And when it flares up because I exercise, I'm like, well, that's just a lie. So, and it's like, but it does every time I ever doing squats or whatever, and it's like, okay, the pain came back tonight. All right, you know.
And the thing is, I would like to invite everyone out there to not think that your mind is your adversary. The reason the pain comes back when Lee exercises sometimes and flares up is simply because his brain and his nervous system are poking him on the shoulder and saying, are you sure? Are you sure we're safe? Because, I'm not really sure. And when Lee sits down to do his JournalSpeak, what he says back to them is, it's okay, guys. I'm sure. I'm going to sit and feel this stuff. I'm going to prove to you one more day that we're okay. And that's when, little by slowly, the pain just never comes.
Yes, and it takes time. It does take time. It does take time, and I've dealt with, like I said, over the years, different manifestations, and it takes time. But there's so much better tools out there now than there was 15 years ago. There's so much more information and YouTube videos and Facebook pages and JournalSpeak and all this kind of stuff, which I didn't have. That I believe that can move the process along if you do it. Okay, if
That's
you
right.
do it,
It
you
works if
you
you
got to
work
do
it.
it.
All right. Well, you know what, Lee? I just want to thank you so, so much. This has been a fantastic interview. You inspire me because, like I said, you and I have never met, and you took these tools and you used them, and you're healing. And I thank you from my heart for talking to everyone
And I
today.
thank you for the information that you've put out there. It's been extremely helpful, and I'm grateful.
Well, that has been another fantastic episode of The Cure for Chronic Pain, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.